All right, next up in the women's bantamweight division, we got Bia Mesquita coming in at minus 550, looking to go 7-0 as she takes on Monsi Rendon, who comes in at plus 420. I'll start off on the Mesquita side of things, who wasted no time trying to make it to the UFC after she switched her attention from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a realm in which she is probably the most decorated woman of all time, and she shifted that focus to mixed martial arts. And in June of 2024, she made her debut. She was able to get the win there. And then in October, she was able to sign with LFA, October of 2024. And she rattled off another 4 straight wins there. Most importantly, that LFA title winning performance against Sierra Dinwiddie, and that got her right to the UFC. Pretty much a full year later, she was able to get to the UFC. I think it was actually October where she ended up making her debut against Alexieva. But she's 34 years old. I believe she's going to be 35 very shortly. The UFC knew she didn't really want to waste time, so they didn't even bother throwing her onto the Contender Series. Her jiu-jitsu alone is good enough to make it to the UFC, but now it's all about meshing those two things together. It's about being able to get to the grappling safely without getting hurt too much or failing on takedown attempts and then slowing down, gassing out, and eventually getting picked apart by opponents. That's worst case scenario for Mesquita. That's remained to be seen as of yet, right? Through 6 fights. The one fight that does have a bit of an asterisk beside it was her DQ win over Hope Chase. That was a fight where she repeatedly got to dominant positions and was able to sink in chokes, but Chase is one of the toughest women to ever put away, and Mesquita was struggling to do so. Luckily for Mesquita, as it seemed as she was kind of slowing down just a tad, she ended up getting upkicked illegally by Chase, and that was a way for Mesquita to kind of find her way out of that matchup. And, more often than not, we see the referee give the fouling fighter the benefit of the doubt and, put those matchups as no contest or result those matchups as no contest. But for some reason, they ended up doing it as a DQ to still give Mesquita the win. So that's one fight that I kind of have circled where I'm just like, if she can't get the submission win within the first round and a half, where do things go? She has teamed up with American Top Team since she turned to the pro MMA world, and that's obviously the best way for her to try to get to the best of her potential in the mixed martial arts game. But the striking will always be a bit of a shortcoming. Her wrestling is largely reliant on her strength to try to get a hold of her opponents and either find those trips or work to the back and hop onto the back from there. But we're going to see that get tested in her first couple fights here with the UFC, and then we'll be able to decide whether she actually has what it takes to get to a championship level in the UFC. But again, I think she's a month shy of her 35th birthday, so she's really going to have to get on the horse if she hopes to make some noise in the bantamweight division, which again, not that deep to begin with. So she could really jump to the top of the division with a couple quick wins here. But she is going up against BJJ brown belt Monse Rendon, who I believe has kind of changed her name, or at least chopped off the rat in her Montserrat in that first name. So she's going with Monse Rendon from now on. She's coming off of an upset victory over UFC debutante Elise Pereira. It was a split decision win, but I thought it was quite obvious that Rendon deserved to win that fight. Pereira, 19 years old, so she came into the UFC maybe a little bit too early. She was very reckless and aggressive with her striking approach, what paid off for her on the regional scene, but we saw even against a fighter like Rendon, not the way to go. Rendon was able to stand up to a lot of her punching power. She was able to out-clinch her, out-grapple her, really just cause Pereira a ton of issues there. That allowed Rendon to bounce back after that loss she had to Daria Zelezniakova, a fight where I felt she was grappling a little bit too hard. I felt if she stuck with her striking a little bit more, she could end up on the winning end there, but she ended up losing that fight. But she did also pull off a upset victory over Tamiris Vidal, a fight where I had no idea why everybody was so hot on Vidal. Rendon was undefeated going into that matchup. Nothing spectacular, nothing that really jumped off the page from her regional fights, but she had the basics down, right? She's a BJJ brown belt. She's very athletically gifted, right? She's, one of the more built and in shape fighters that we have in that division. And I think that really helps her out in terms of staying out of bad positions. She's often stronger than her opponents, so she can kind of bully them in the clinch if that's what she really wants to do. But even her striking, it's basic, but it gets the job done, right? She does good work with straight shots down the pipe, really sticks her opponents from distance. She doesn't mind being a little aggressive and trying to command some respect there, but in the clinch, she's often very strong as well. And she holds a 100% takedown defense rate, which is going to be big for her here against Bia Mesquita, who's going to be looking to get this fight to the ground. Now, I'm going to give the slight strike, the obvious striking advantage to Rendon, right? Mesquita obviously has a lot of work to do there. She's not comfortable in the striking game. She throws big shots to try to get to the clinch, to try to get to takedowns. But Rendon could be the stronger fighter, right? Rendon could make this harder for Mesquita to get this fight to the ground. And even if it does hit the ground, sure, Mesquita could get to a position where she finds a submission or even just grinds this fight out. But Rendon is strong. She's a BJJ brown belt. She knows what she's doing on the ground. So it would kind of surprise me if Mesquita just rolls over her immediately, right? I think Rendon will provide some resistance here. I see this fight actually going over 1.5 rounds. I see this fight potentially even hitting the scorecards. My prediction will be Mesquita, but she should not be minus 550 here. Rendon, again, her strength alone, which is something that I really believe is more of a factor at this level of women's mixed martial arts and at a certain rate, lower level men's MMA. But for women's MMA, athleticism, physicality, I think is a little bit more of a factor in fights than just skill alone. Skill alone, Mesquita is, will blow Rendon out of the water, especially in the grappling game. But Rendon's physicality, it kind of brings up and makes this a little bit more even of a fight. I still believe Mesquita should be the favorite. She should be roughly around minus 150. So minus 550. I feel like there is a little bit of value on the Rendon side of things here. So I would not trust Mesquita at minus 550. I think the sneaky play would be maybe Mesquita by decision, which I think was roughly around plus 300, plus 400. The over 1.5, which could cover either outcome as well, because I think Rendon can make this competitive. But again, if Rendon can stop the takedowns, be the more physical fighter in the clinch, and can keep this fight standing, this is a very winnable fight for her. So at plus 420, I think it's conceivable that it's worth value. It's worth a shot. But I'd pass on Mesquita at minus 50. I'm going to predict her to win. I think she wins by decision, but I would think twice in terms of taking that type of chalk.